He has to take the sword tonight on either of my shoulders and change me into something new. So let me just bring the meeting to order here. My name is Eric Nowak. I am officially marked as the president-elect. And that could change, I think, tonight. First, I'd like to just we'll start out our meeting normally we salute the American flag and the Texas flag. So, Suzanne Hart, could you help us with the U.S. flag salute, please? Thank you.
Guys, put your hats on, take them off, and ladies, let's put our hands in our heart. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And the Texas salute, Jay. Jay Sack, could you lead us in the Texas salute?
Great state.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you very much. And finally, the invocation. Richard Dodson, please lead us.
I think everybody should stand. Okay, and number two, all the guys standing in the back, it's going to be a fine by our who's in charge of security. So, these front seats, that's in the Baptist church. You can sit up. All of you. And join into the crowd. My gracious Heavenly Father, we come before thy throne in Jesus' name, your precious Son and our Lord and Savior. Dear Jesus, hear our prayer. May we be a member of your flock. Be our shepherd, Lord, and direct our path. Be our guardian, Lord, and protect us from harm. Be our healer, Lord, our physician, and hear our physical afflictions. In your name we pray and celebrate your victory. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Richard. So just very quickly, we're going to change the order of events that we usually have. We usually check for new members a little later, but Charles has a little tighter schedule. Charles, do we have any new members tonight?
So we did have some new members joining tonight. Bob, will you stand up with your wife? We want to recognize you. You guys joined us. I know we have some more people signing up, so we're going to get those information out, but we did have them show up tonight and make sure that we recognize them as new members. We also have lots of guests. If you're a guest, if you could raise your hand. Appreciate all that.
Thanks, Charles. I had COVID last month and I couldn't attend the great party, but I got to see the video and it wasn't anything that was X-rated or anything, so that's good. But, so I saved some of the things that I wanted to say for tonight. First, a big thank you to the 2022 and 23 officers for their great efforts in the service of the club over the last year to 2 years. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been a real honor for me to be a member and now president of CCRMC, and I'm looking forward to working with our officers and trustees for the next 2 years. John, do you want to lay the hands on and officially transfer me over? We'll take it home.
So it was very nice being able to walk in here for the first time in 2 years, more than 2 years, to be able to sit back, grab a sandwich, and enjoy some conversation. So thank you, Eric, for your willingness to step up. So, anyway, if you would please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear.
I do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President.
The office of President.
Of the Republican Men's Club of Collin County.
Of the Republican Men's Club of Collin County.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve. Protect. And defend the Constitution.
And defend the Constitution.
Of the United States.
Of the United States.
And of Texas.
And of Texas.
And that I will be a faithful servant.
And I will be a faithful servant.
As President.
As President.
Of the Collin County Republican Men's Club.
Of the Collin County Republican Men's Club.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Exciting. So, if you're a former CCRMC president, would you please stand up to be recognized? There they are, former presidents. Thank you. Looking around the room at these guys and sizing it up. I think I can do this. Except for John Myers. Except for John Myers. Did you know John was raised in Kansas and went to college there until moving to Dallas in 1983? Did you know that his dad was an early political influence on him and showed him how some political activism was fighting for the little guy? As a boy, John walked and attended campaign rallies with his dad. He made phone calls to voters at 10 years old. So on some Kansas playground, it's like, hey Jimmy, what did you do yesterday? Oh man, we went out and we played ball, we had a great time. Hey Johnny, what did you do? I was bringing out the vote for local commissioners. I think I'm feeling pretty good about it. John's been involved in both Dallas and Collin County Republican parties, serving as precinct chair in several county and state GOP committees. Was involved in guiding the Foster Friends of Collin County, a nonprofit providing support to foster kids and their families, and on October 21st of last year, was sworn in as your Collin County GOP chairperson. It's a high bar. I want to thank you, John. You are the Republican goat. There's no doubt. So as most of you know by now, CCRMC is where men and women, we love women, join together, learn together, and work together for the Republican Party by promoting our goals and principles. We're most noted in this club for our monthly meeting keynote speakers, Texas-based and non-Texas-based political figures, global diplomats, distinguished scholars, and other thought leaders, speaking on immigration, terrorism, foreign country competitors, and other timely subjects. This last year we learned about UFOs, the ugly truth about background checks, which I thought was fascinating, and supporting our veterans and building leaders of tomorrow. We received an expert-level review of current Texas state legislation. We heard from U.S. presidential candidate Brian Binkley, Plano Mayor John Munns, and McKinney City Manager Barry Shelton. That is really quite a schedule that we hosted last year, and I'm looking forward to 2024. Tonight is no exception. Our speaker is Geoffrey Malafsky. He will be discussing a highly relevant subject, the Israel-Hamas conflict. We also support the Lincoln Day Dinner, the Plano 4th of July Parade, and of course all the Republican Get Out the Vote activities here in Collin County. Just briefly, kind of as an aside, but I feel it's important to say this, especially this year. It's often said that this coming election is the most important in our lifetimes. This year, 2024, is going to be no different, and it's going to be super critical for Republicans everywhere to double down on our efforts to reverse this bizarro world of political and social upheaval that we've been suffering in the last few years. The open border, political corruption, Fed Department weaponization, and other situations that are literally fraying the edges of society. We see it all the time on TV. We can see it everywhere. Not all events are taking place by accident. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I don't always assume incompetence. Some of this is intentional and in some cases malevolent. But one thing is for sure, we will be successful if our club and our county and our state come together and work hard for our party and our country. So, speaking of our club, I want to do some quick Republican updates before we introduce we have our speaker introduced. We have the upcoming Lincoln Day Dinner. That's the largest Collin County Republican fundraiser on February 17th. This is not unknown to almost everybody in this room, I think. It's at South Fork Ranch. Senator Ted Cruz will be speaking. So right now, the Men's Club supports especially buying groups, getting people together and buying tables together so that we can have a good showing at the dinner. There's 10 per table. So I would encourage you, if you can go. If you can talk to your friends about getting together and getting a table, ask them to check their friends. This is a critical time to get as much fundraising as we can for the road ahead in this election year. We've also begun block walking and all the other activities, because this is our Republican primary will be taking place, I believe, on March 5th. So you can taste the excitement in the room. Okay. So everybody, please be engaged. Please push forward, and let's do a great job this year for the Republican Party. I hope you all are enjoying barbecue, and all of our colleagues here. So I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Mark Myers, VP of Programs, who's going to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Eric. Our speaker tonight is a really unique individual. I have known him for quite a few years now. I could just have a summary introduction very quickly and tell you that Geoffrey Malafsky is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. He is definitely one of the smartest people you'll ever meet. And importantly, he is a up-and-coming rising tennis player, which I appreciate, because I'm always looking for talent in the tennis world. So Geoffrey's topic tonight is going to be a current and historical perspective on the Israeli-Hamas conflict. Geoffrey Malafsky has a PhD in chemistry from Penn State University. He was a research scientist in nanotechnology at the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington, D.C. He subsequently joined defense contractor SAIC and was director of technology innovation, supporting numerous diverse clients for DARPA, Defense Advanced Projects Research Agency, DARPA, one of the most advanced military agencies we have. He was also with the Office of Naval Research and worked on multiple clients across the Department of Defense as a technology expert on advanced programs. His first company, Techni2, provided technical expertise to large government and corporate clients in data integration, metadata implementation, semantic technology, enterprise architecture, and knowledge management. Lessons learned from this work led him to form his second company, Phasic Systems Incorporated, with a big data product called DataStar for data normalization and custom business computing. He is now CEO and chief scientist for two startup companies, Technic Analytics and Caligo Real Data. Technic Analytics is a software as a service business with specialized products that use accumulated human expertise to automate making ultra-accurate data known as high-fidelity data from legacy and integrated data sources for high-impact uses. Caligo Real Data uses the advanced data processing capabilities from Technic Analytics to enable enhanced data intelligence for sophisticated quantitative investment modeling and market profit and risk scenario predictive analytics. As I told you, he's a very, very smart guy. He lives in Fairview, Texas, and is a, as I mentioned, avid and rising tennis player near my level, and may get there very soon. And a do-it-yourself landscaper on his 2-acre property. He is a member of the Shabbat of Plano Synagogue. He actively promotes using actual fact-based and objective science in concert with strong ethical and moral precepts to improve our country and our communities. Ladies and gentlemen, with a very unique perspective on the Israeli-Hamas conflict, Geoffrey Malafsky.
Well, thank you very much. I gave Mark a handsome speech for all that. Yeah, it's a business induction. He mentioned two companies. So, as he said, I'm going to bring in a scientist perspective because that's what we've been chatting about for a long time. So, yes, I was a research scientist, and then I joined contractors, started my own companies and that. But my particular bent has always been in wholesale the culture of actual science, which has fallen by the wayside in some ways. And so in science, which was beaten into me in graduate school, it is the job of the scientist to look under every possible scenario and find your own mistakes. And the worst thing that could happen to your career is to publish a peer-reviewed paper and then have someone come behind you and say, oh, you missed that. And there's many, many situations of high-profile scientists getting a bit too irrationally exuberant about their recent find and then hugely embarrassing. Well, that's part of what I'm going to be coming to a conclusion today. So that's the world I grew up in science, and it was career killer to ever not do that level of work. So then I started companies to kind of bring that into Department of Defense and intelligence agencies and DARPA, and I had a knack for connecting fundamental science to kind of the deployment of said. So that's where I got into a lot of that. Now, where that's gone is that at a personal level, I follow what's going on, but one of the things that I do every day of my life is I refuse to relax my standards that I want objectively quantitative facts as the basis of everything. So at a personal level, as soon as I sense that somebody is speculating or hyper-emotive or just giving me some sort of tribal war story of theirs, to be honest, I just ignore them. I just don't care in the slightest. As I've aged, I can't hide that anymore. I used to do a good job. My wife forced me to hide that and pretend I cared. I don't care in the slightest. So what that's led to, like everyone here, is that the media today, and I'm fair, if I see a good story, then it's great. It's almost impossible to get a true fact-based story anywhere on media. And the social circuit is not there. Now, one of the things I didn't tell Mark was in 2021, I was asked to teach a master's level class in data science to the University of Maryland, and they had the misfortune of having a hardliner old scientist. So I expected them to do all work all the time without fail. It was kind of a culture shock for them. But one of the things I had them do, and this is during COVID, is that we got all the COVID data and we 100% digested it. And then I turned to them and had them do a due diligence, which they've never done before, is to say, now go take the big headlines of the day and tell me if the reporter, the headline, is commensurate with the actual science that's going on. So I'll give you the answer to that a little later, but that is the perspective I have. So when it comes to, obviously, the Israel-Hamas war, it shouldn't be that surprising what my position is, but the point I was making to Mark and to Bob and some other friends is that if you look at it from that scientific point of view, one of the other great frustrations I have is all this stuff is predictable. And it's not just predictable a month ahead of time. That is some of the work I did 20 years ago was on a contract for a client. I predicted, based upon things that were happening, what the next 20 years, 25 years of China's intervention would be and kind of their war-fighting technology. And then there's a bunch of smart people in Washington, D.C. that do this day in and day out. And I used to believe that the system was constructed so that their voices and those results would go through. In my consulting world, I tended to support directly very, very senior people. And the last job I had, I was in the Pentagon all the time, and I was supporting very senior people. And one of the things that annoyed me was I saw creeping political attitudes get in to very senior people who were supposed to be making fact-based decisions for the good of the country. And so I didn't like that. I'm not a quiet person, so I voiced my concerns, which is almost unheard of for a contractor to do, but I did that. So anyway, so in following that, I've been piecing together things that I saw through my career, things that I look up. I never read the regular media. I actually almost exclusively go to research journals and read that on whatever that topic may be. So on the Israeli war, there are a couple points I want to make. And since this is not a technical talk, we're not starting the minute one of a 1 hour presentation. But my premise is, which I'm going to give heads up, is that piecing these things together, and it's not new. is that we are in a far more serious decline scenario that transcends usual politics. Now, everyone's crying foul, life was better yesteryear and things like that. And so I'm trying to give you that initial view, is that I don't ascribe to anything like that. So I never go into kind of an emotional state. I'm not going to cry foul. But when you look at the history, there's a bunch of scholarly studies that study the rise and decay cycles of open societies. And it's a very natural thing. It goes up and it goes down and this and that. The problem with the decay cycle is that you have the chance that the decay becomes so embedded in the culture of that society that it actually leads to dissolution of the country. And so, and it's not my thing, so we're dangerously close to that right now, which is my point. And so, but I never take that at face value. So what I do as part of my science thing, the other requirement of being a scientist is what I call triangulation of facts. You can never take anything at face value, even if by an esteemed Nobel Prize scientist, because everyone makes mistakes. It's just the nature of the game. Everyone has a bias, even though scientists are not supposed to have a bias. You can't help it. You do something for a long time, you believe in a certain thing, and if you're in the science world, you know that some of the major advances, like Einstein's theories, were discredited initially. And that's actually human nature. So you can't say science is perfect, because there's humans inside of the system. So we do what was called triangulation of facts, and I really saw how this was done at a professional level when I was supporting some of the intelligence agencies, and I saw what gets done. One of the issues about that, the reason why intelligence work doesn't get portrayed in the media properly, is no one thinks intelligence is accurate. It's a whole bunch of uncertainty, and your adversary is not dumb. So your adversary is doing everything possible to get inside your head and provide misinformation and disinformation. So there's ways around that, and one of the ways around that, which I've used very successfully in my consulting, is to take all that to heart and then proactively say, well, what would I look for if I thought it was going in this direction? What would I look for if it's going here? That's called scenario modeling, and that's why it's one of my businesses to do that for Wall Street. But if you put those pieces together, so from top to bottom, the points I'm trying to make about that premise is that we have to have a calibration point. So the calibration point is that we're Americans, we firmly believe in the United States, but then the question is, what is that? What is our belief? Sometimes it's just community, country, duty, honor, but really if you boil it down, it's the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And that's where we say, this is what makes this country special. And the fact that whatever ills is human nature, so there's going to be ills in society, and that's just the way it is. But in this country, like my grandparents came out of Eastern Europe, intelligently before Hitler, so that was a wise thing. But the point is, if you look over the history of other countries, you don't have that opportunity. You can't just make it on your own. You can't have the chance to make it on your own. You're pushed down. And we have lots of people who have come here. I had in grad school someone from mainland China who was very, very nice, and he tells stories. He was one of the ones who was put out in the fields, because they didn't like scientists. And then when China decided they liked scientists, without asking him, he was then brought back and sent to an American university to do postdoc work. So in most countries, you don't have that freedom to do what you want to do or grow or to expand. So if that's true, we now then say, yes, Israel and Hamas are killing each other. That's not news, right? I knew that. I can go to sleep tomorrow and know it's going to happen again and again and again. That's not the issue. The issue is, what is the actual strategic context of this war, and what is the strategic context of the overall Middle East war plan, and what does this scenario mean going forward for the United States? And it's that scenario going forward that has me, who normally never concludes anything is so bad that a game of tennis can't solve it, that we're kind of at the breaking point. And we have a son with a granddaughter, and so yes, I'm very much focused on those type of issues. So a scientist always starts with facts, and I'm being nice to you. It's usually the first 55 minutes. And Mark wouldn't let me bring my slides. And so, but I have some in my pocket. So if you really want to hear about nanotechnology, I can do it. But it's just the latest in a long series, and the biggest issue is, yes, there's this attack. Yes, Hamas is a terrorist organization, whatever the deluded people otherwise think, but it's not new. And then some of the points, the other key issue is about doing this, is when you go and read information, it's important to look behind the scenes and see if that person writing the information has any credibility. And even if they have credibility, have they somehow lost their way and they're saying it. So I spent a lot of time doing that, and there's very few places to do. So one is a recent one that came out last October, right after the Hamas war started, which is the West Point Counterterrorism College and Counterterrorism College. And the key point was there is that Hamas broke through what everyone thought they were going to do. They thought they were going to fire a few rockets every now and then, but that they would enjoy governing Gaza. By doing this very precipitously, they knowingly made a statement that they're going away from being like what the IRA did, you know, break it up into two camps, that they're now full-fledged war-fighting terrorists, and they're all in on that. And that point has kind of shocked people because they weren't expecting it. And that lack of expectation shows you that with all the intelligence resources, how hard it is to read the other person's mind, how hard it is to do that. And there are some conclusions from that, which I'll make at the end, about where we need to go as a country, because we're not doing enough in that regard. Since then, there's been 5 or 6 wars, and then another interesting one, which was just a month ago, the Center for Strategic and International Studies. It was the 3rd deadliest terrorist attack anywhere in the world. The first was September 11th here, but interestingly, on their chart, it's Muslim against Muslim are the other ones. And you just saw some bombings and firefights between Iran and Pakistan. You see mosques being blown up from one Muslim group to another Muslim group. So the point is, it's not just Muslims go kill Jews or Muslims go kill Americans. This is their warfighting strategy. This is what's going on, and we can't hide from that. And then particularly Islamic State has, in one of their attacks, cumulatively over their attacks, killed upwards of 33,000 people. Now the other thing is that I'm not a big fan of the UN. I don't think many people are, but they do have a voice in the world, and that's one of the other things that you can do is to see what are they saying, and then why are they saying that. So then the term genocide has been thrown around, and so here's the UN definition of genocide. The popular understanding of what constitutes genocide tends to be broader than the content of the norm under international law. Article 2 of the Genocide Convention contains a narrow definition of the crime of genocide, which includes 2 main elements: a mental element, intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, and a physical element to do so. And then importantly, they point out the intent is most difficult element to determine, which means it's just like crime here. You just can't raise the flag and say some of my friends are being killed even though they killed you first, and you get in that cycle. It's a far more specific, narrow definition. So that gets into the concept of disinformation, which now used to be only in tabloids in the shopping carts, if you remember back then. But that gets into the exact reason why I don't watch media. It's pretty much continuous disinformation from every side. And every side will point the finger at everyone else, but meanwhile, you're not getting a survey of facts. So we claim that the American public is well informed, but in fact, we're not. And so in fact, the quality of information and awareness in American society is plummeting, and particularly amongst the young people. So what that tells me is, and I actually did this successfully in some of my consulting, is I would always look, because when you get into a large organization, humans are humans. So believe it or not, to get anything done, even in an advanced technology sense, in my contracts in the Department of Defense, even though I am not a political person, I'm a technical person. My wife often says I don't speak human, because fundamentally I don't care. And but I realized I could not achieve my aims without actually understanding the organizational dynamics that were going on And I finally had an epiphany one day, and I stood in the back of a very large meeting watching everyone squabble, and I realized that it was like chemical kinetics. So I'm assuming all of you fondly remember your high school and college kinetics now. If not, I have that frequency. But the point was, it's a lot of chaotic interacting factors, and the way you control that is you start to nudge some of them out and you start to nudge some of them in, and you don't have to do it very overtly. You're kind of massaging the environment. And I went around for years after that doing that in very large organizations, and I was always successful. And so that gets into kind of what's going on here. And so there's a couple of other major examples of the brutality of war and terrorism, which includes Syria and Russia and Serbs and all that type of stuff. And then one of the ones that was actually very interesting that came out because it made it into medical literature was a review of the Iraqi missile attack on Tehran. So it wasn't just strategic warfighting that they went in and they were actually doing a medical study of the victims of those missiles. And so that takes it from another vein. It's not just, oh, you shot a missile first, I shot a missile second time. So that gets us into the next phase, which is, okay, there's all this war going on, there's a lot of terrorism. Are the terrorists inherently evil? Well, yes. But why is the terrorism occurring? And then why don't people see it? That was a question that was raised earlier. And that, answering that question is really the heart and soul of what this analysis is, because you have to get into the decision-making process, both of the people perpetrating the crime, but especially now in our country, you have to ask the question, which we often do, why are those pro-Palestinian people that way? Why are college students, who, let's face it, are wealthy, they're going to very expensive colleges, they've been brought up in a privileged way, why are they buying into that? Why is this such an issue to them? And then that's not the only issue. So you get into that decision-making issue, and you're saying, well, what's going on inside their heads? Well, the first part of that is to put the war fighting back on the ground of historic war fighting and what the law of war fighting is and what the strategy of war fighting is. And so part of that is, which is not just an academic question. So part of the progressive viewpoint, which gets into why they're being pro-Palestinian, why they want to defund the police, why they want to do that, is they think that that sometime in the past, there's these pastoral groups who lived at peace and shared the nuts and fruits they picked, and then some angry Vikings came in and killed everybody, and we've been in bad shape ever since. So what I find interesting are two studies, which I'll mention. Nature magazine, which is prestigious, in June of 2018, early Neolithic executions indicated by clustered cranial trauma in the mass grave in Germany, and it broken up the common wisdom that was there, that literally that warfare only started when large countries moved into agrarian farming. But before that, when you're hunting and gathering and you're moving out and you're doing all that stuff, everyone was peaceful. So that was the prevailing attitude. And so then this is unmistakable evidence that that was not true. And so that was around 5600 BC. And then now another one, which is even more interesting, which is in Smithsonian Magazine in January 2016, an ancient brutal massacre may be the earliest evidence of war. And so they actually found, this should sound terrible, but including with Hamas, even nomadic hunter-gatherers engaged in deliberate mass killings 10,000 years ago. Skulls smashed by blunt force, bodies pin-cushioned by projectile points, and hapless victims, including a pregnant woman, abused with their hands bound. So this isn't just something new. And so this really takes off the table the notion, which is part of the critical race theory, if you see that. And it basically is saying that the Germanic tribes, which is really coming over, introduced war and hatred and everything else. And that's part of what's going on. And so to see young people who are white, going out and saying, I'm horrible, it's just insane. So that brings us to what is the nature of war? And so there's another one, review of political science for 2014 with the nice title, Why We Kill, the political science of political violence against civilians. Because then you have to ask, why are the civilians being attacked? So Israel's being yelled at because there's lots of civilian deaths there, even though that follows an overt act of civilians. But the other issue is that this isn't just about Israel, this is about the United States. This is where I'm weaving it together. So going back to Vietnam, where I paid attention, the United States is always being beaten up in the media whenever some innocents are being killed in a war. Now in Vietnam, you could have the Viet Cong blowing up cafes and everything else in Vietnam, and then we go attack them, and then a couple of kids, or a mistaken bomb falls and hurts a medical facility, and that is always accounted. So the dogma on beating the U.S. is to beat it by headlines. And so to get you to one of my conclusions is that has to change. And that's going to have to change at the political level. We're just going to have to accept going forward that war is war, and there's a distinction between losing the war and being nice, and winning the war and doing what you need to do. So the point of that is, from this annual review of political science, is to recognize that large-scale violence against civilians is neither arbitrary, unattended, nor distinct from the central logic of war itself. Civilians are not merely bystanders to armed conflict. They play a central, if often involuntary role as the underwriters of war's material, financial, and human requisites. Sometimes they become the object of war itself. Terrorism is a strategy of coercion, a means to compel a target government to change policy. The central logic of this strategy is simple: inflict enough pain on the opposing society to overwhelm its interest in resisting terrorist demands, and so to induce the government to concede or the population to revolt against that government. This strategy is most often used against democratic regimes because they are the most sensitive. And so that has always been true of what's going on, and that's what's going on today with Israel, Hamas, with everyone clamoring, you need a ceasefire, you need a ceasefire. No, once you engage in that situation, you keep going. It's unfortunate that civilians die, but you didn't start the war, and you have to prosecute said war. And finally, the famous theorist of war, Karl von Clausewitz, in his famous On War, is one of his famous quotes: "War is the continuation of policy with other means." And so the point of that, besides what it says, is that Hamas and the Muslim terrorists are not just doing this because they're mean, evil people. They probably go home at night and kiss their kids and read them, little stories and all that type of stuff. It's because they have decided this is the form of warfare that they want to prosecute, and it works for them. And so now that we know that, we have to understand what our response is going to be to that. And it can't be, I'm sorry we upset you and all that type of stuff. So this gets into the other part of science, which is another major problem that I have, is that science requires that you have a total view of the system. You may be doing research in one narrow area, but you have to understand all the external forces on that, because you can't know whether something you have discovered is truly a discovery, or whether it's something that's just an anomaly in the area of what you're doing. So that's called a total system view of what you're doing, and it's a requirement to do that, to be a good scientist. And it's also the complete requirement of being a good warfighter or doing good national intelligence. And so when you don't get that view, when you get the bias creeping in, then your intelligence is not very good, and you get a myopic view of warfighting, which is now dangerous. So what that means is internal. We're starting to see things, and this is what I'm picking out, is we're seeing a Maoist, if you remember Mao's Little Red Book, which was all popular when some of us were young. What I hear, and I never bought it, so I'm clean that way. So we're seeing what I hear is the same type of language. We're hearing this upside down Alice in Wonderland modification of language with a pseudo-intellectual underpinning to make it sound like it's a philosophy, to make it sound like it's something going forward. And then Mao, of course, is very famous for turning these into little sayings. Well, so I think that we're seeing that now with, like, defund the police. And so I grew up around New York City around the 70s, where you didn't want to be there. You could not be in Central Park after sundown. Just could not be there. It was dirty, it was crime-ridden, the subways were horrible. It took a series of people but it really took Rudy Giuliani instituting the broken windows policy and cracking down. And that's why tourists came back to New York City. So then I've been railing against this to my son's friends for a lot of years, and they didn't listen at all, is why would you think that's the good times? So why would you want to go back to that? And so this whole defund the police thing, this whole crying over stop and frisk, you know, you can always fix the mechanics, the procedures or something, but that's what kept people safe. The other part of that is, which I see as Maoist, is those people pretend to speak for the good people living in the projects. There are good people there, and they're trying to live their lives. They're the ones who are victims of the crime. They're the ones who can't come down the elevator because there's a drug dealer in the lobby. It's those people that need protection. And so those people need protection, and so by removing that protection, you're making them vulnerable for some philosophy that you have that is not based upon reality. So now my son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter live in Astoria, Queens right now, and it is getting worse. And I try not to, because we're not supposed to do it, but I leak out, I told you so every now and then. I know, it's not supposed to happen. But the interesting part about that is, particularly our daughter-in-law, who was hyper-progressive, is now shifting. And because the real life is invading that. She has a daughter, she's working, she's a hard-working lawyer, you know, they live paycheck to paycheck. So the reality of life is intruding on that philosophy, right? I keep saying my son is a Republican, but in name, because if you put it down, they drag him out of his apartment and burn him alive, you know, in the streets of Astoria. So that's just not a possibility. But he's a lawyer who has spent his time, they do housing law, and he was in one firm that took on the tenants who were being thrown out and all that. And at the beginning, he was, I'm happy to help you people, but he had enough people who were just abusing the system that he just lost it. So he moved to another firm that was doing filtering. This is the firm he's at now. So then he got bigger projects, some of them very real. And so like the city of New York owns a large number of projects, and they're a bad landlord. Like during the pandemic, they were not fixing the elevators, so elderly people could not go up and down the elevators. So their organization kind of sues the city to kind of get that changed. But even then, he's gotten much notoriety for helping people who need it, like some vets who have just come over and they have some trouble adjusting. But he also has some notoriety, particularly with the judges, of when the tenant is just being obstinate and just flat out doesn't want to pay rent, he's not going to take their side. So he goes down there and does that. So bringing in this real life is, I think, critically important. The other part, which has really been a pet peeve of mine since my kids were in school, is education's been on the decline in this country for a very long time. That's something near and dear to me. Both of my parents were teachers, and I spent a great deal of time tutoring when I was a grad student to make extra money. And so I was actually very effective in tutoring when the person had some intelligence and initiative. And I keep saying, so I was at Penn State, and the best students I ever had at Penn State in tutoring were the black kids from Philadelphia who were part of the Learning Assistance Center, because they all wanted to excel, and the only thing they were missing were some skills. So I liken it to sports. They were all had native skill, they were all intelligent, and they were all clearly brought up without some skills. So I didn't give them any answers. Like my style of tutoring, I never give you an answer ever. I keep telling you what range of the book to read, and it's okay if we stay here at midnight and keep reading it. So, which I did multiple times. So to a person, they did that. They also started out with low self-confidence because they were never driven to overcome. You know, part of learning is like sports. You have to get the confidence by working at it and succeeding. So that was very successful. They all went on, they all got major grade boosts, and they were all very ecstatic. And I've gone on to teach other people that way. I taught my own kids chemistry at home, which he loved. That's my story. And so the view of that is, which I've been mentioning to people, is not only are we seeing the continuation of poor scores, our entire education system is upside down. It's completely wrong. You don't educate people by loosening standards. You don't get into the NBA by doing a half-assed practice. So intellectualism is exactly the same as physical sports. So if you're wanting to put it on a court all day long, 8 hours a day practicing, you need to do the exact same thing for your intellectual life. And it's going to be hard, and you're going to have self-doubt, and you're going to work through it, and that's what it takes. And that's what our schools should be doing. And so I'm a firm believer of that. And then I have some statistics here, like from one USC study, the US spent per capita than any other country. And that's 40% more than the number 2 on the list, which is the UK. But if you measure who scores the best, we're number 10 in math, and we're number 9 in science, and Finland in their study was both number 1. A more common study is used by this organization, OECD, and their PISA thing, which is a big international study of schools. And so they were measuring 15-year-olds, and number 1 in math is Singapore. US is down with Malta and Croatia. Reading is number 1 is Singapore. USA barely made it to above average. And in science, number 1 is Singapore. And the US is way down at number 15. This is actually a significant problem, because I saw a story even today that the Taiwan semiconductor plants, which are going to build like $40 billion plants in Arizona, announced that they're delaying it several years, and one of the principal reasons is they can't get skilled labor. They can't get skilled laborers because our schools don't turn out engineers. Now, the human populace hasn't changed. The human populace today is no less intelligent than it was in the 1950s or the 1930s or the 1920s. We're not making use of our population. So you can turn this into a personal level. Again, I keep saying I'm not a scientist. I don't think at this from a humanity level. I'm thinking about it from a resource. You know, I'm an employer. This is a resource. This is a significant resource problem for the United States. You're reading about the lack of lithium and cobalt in international supply chains. Well, homegrown, intelligent professionals in very advanced fields is a resource, and we're losing it. In fact, we have lost it. Even when I was in graduate school, it was about 20% Chinese in my group. Now you go to science places and you have 80 to 85% Chinese. And so there's the lone American walking the halls. You can't do that, particularly as we start to bring this advanced technology back home, because, again, reading the tea leaves, we are in a period of empire building. So people have, without all the concerns of social etiquette we seem to have in this country, just want to rebuild their empire. So China is clearly rebuilding their empire. They're not going to stop. There's nothing you can politely say to them, and that is going to roil the world, and it's going to bring the U.S. in direct conflict with them. Russia is clearly on it. I find Russia's attitude more amusing, because to me, I liken it to a 4-year-old. Why do you want Crimea? I want it. No, that's their Crimea. You can't have it. Yes, I want it. And then they go and take it. Now, as parents, we went and took the juice box and gave it back. But you can't do that to Russia. And that also gets to the disinformation campaign. So the UN and other countries want to jump all over Israel for million deaths, but you get some feckless press releases out of the UN about these other ills, and no real action. So my point is, again, coming full back to my view of the world, I'm looking for concrete action. I'm looking to assess everything that goes on, and then I'm looking for a concrete action plan that moves forward. I am not limited by political concerns, because that's not what I think. But then the last reference I'll mention is, this is fresh. The Director of National Intelligence in their Global Trends 2025 report will saying that the international system post-World War II will be almost unrecognizable by 2025, owing to the rise of emerging powers, a transfer of wealth and economic power from west to east, and the influence of non-state actors. And that includes global terrorism and actual warfighting status. So why they don't say that, if you know how to read intelligence documents, it's really what's being implied of the danger. And so whatever you might think about Joe Biden right here, you have to go into the heads of the decision-making process. For him to fight off his progressive people, which is filling this room and yelling at him nonstop, means that the intelligence that he sees is far scarier than anything you could possibly read in the open media. And that means that if you take Game of Thrones, it's not winter is coming, winter is here. So where I conclude with that is we need to rise above, yes, politics at the local level and the national level is it, but internal U.S. is not enough. We are an actor on stage, and we are going to be challenged. And the truth of that historically is if we challenge and shrink from that challenge, then we lose our stature as a major power. With that comes economic malaise and failure, deep-seated, more than you can imagine, and a long period where our children and grandchildren will be struggling as like my grandparents who came over in 1922. So we have opportunity, but what I'm proposing is concrete steps that address it in that format. One, which again, not being politically sensitive, if you look at the map of Israel, you look at what Russia's doing, you look at what China's doing, you look at what every other country has done throughout history, Gaza and the West Bank should just be annexed. It's as simple as that. They're under attack, it's land, you fill it up. Now, if you're not willing to do that, which I would say historically is the right answer, then you have to say you have to make a solution stick. And that does not make yourself a punching bag for terrorists continuously. And so one of other Clausewitz's famous sayings is that you have to be strong at all times. And that's the other concern I've had, so I'll stop there. And I spent a lot of time working for the military branches and in the military, and it disturbed me, and I have a lot of friends who've been lifelong military people, is that there's a concern that we have entered a phase that with pre-Vietnam and pre-World War II, is that the concentration on political concerns has seeped down to the command level, and that's a very, very dangerous thing to do. So whoever we support, I'm fixated on those issues. Who's going to truly, not just use words in politics, who's going to truly recognize that the Department of Defense needs to be beefed up now, not just in armaments, but down at the actual commander level. You need to get out the politicians, and you need to impose actual war fighters. And then the same thing happens in our schools, and so the schooling has been an issue, a concern of mine, and so I actually broached a business concept with Bob and Mark at one time, and so we have friends who are high-level athletes. So I have a friend who is a former junior pro tennis athlete who's black, and we often talk about he's in the black community trying to help them through tennis, getting into education, but I broached to him the concept, well, think about it from a different point of view. You're saving the black community. I said, I don't think in terms of human terms, but there's a resource there. There's just as many super intelligent black kids in Atlanta or wherever as there are white kids in the suburbs. But they're not being brought out. So in sports, you cultivate them. You go in there and you find them and you bring them out and you put them in camps and you give them every single thing they need so they excel. And the same thing is true now, so like how we responded to Sputnik, we need to do something exactly the same. And I would say Texas is a leader in many things, and I would suggest this is a doable political thing to basically create this type of parallel outside mainstream education, which is really focused on that. Your ethnicity, your background doesn't matter. We're looking for, the pro-level people because we have this enormous gap in how we're going to actually achieve what we need to achieve. So I appreciate your time, and hopefully some of those ideas make sense.
Jeff, are you willing to take a few questions?
Yeah. Any quick questions?
Yeah,
Anybody?
anybody have any
I
questions?
have a quick question for you. So I'm really big into education like you are. Bill and I have 4 children. We homeschooled, private schooled, and public schooled as well. And what I noticed is in the homeschool arena would be the perfect area for what you just said. And you're actually having the mom who, there's no substitute for a mother sitting right next to her children and cultivating that love for learning, right? And so right now, if my numbers are correct, 5,000 kids have just pulled out of McKinney ISD over the last 12, 18, 24 months, right? And so those numbers are real. And if you put the action behind it, and I was sitting with a table full of those homeschool moms, 10 of them, and they were saying, what do we do about the cultural war? So they're being hit on every head and crying in tears. Are we doing the right thing with homeschooling our kids? So if you couple it with what you just said, yes, you're doing the right thing because that's what God called you to do, but here are the resources you need for your child to succeed, because as a mom, this is always asking, am I making the right choice, and can they succeed? So the question is, how do you take what you want to do right there and couple it with what Texas is already doing with the homeschool community, and using that, just like you said with the African American or the ethnic kids, that you're cultivating those young athletic stars.
Well, I would say it's actually easy. So I have a good friend who lives in Montana, and she's very religious, so she insisted on having a good Christian education for her daughter, who was very bright. And it was obvious her daughter was very bright, never sat still. And then they debated what to do, and so they sent her to regular school, and she just wasn't meshing. And then they were upset up there, they haven't heard of critical race theory yet. And so it takes a while to get through the snowdrifts. And so, so what I did for her, because she and I had deep conversations about that, she used to work for me, and we'd go on business trips all the time. And I had deep conversations with my Christian friends about their beliefs, and that's great, you know, so do that. But so I actually had her send me the links to the homeschooling Christian education curriculums that she was looking at, and I said, I'll just go through them. I said, the Christian side you can focus on, but I'll tell you whether this is hard hitting. And she knows me, you know, no watered down, Johnny got 2 apples, and you know, stuff like that. You know, I believe in teaching calculus to 2-year-olds. That's fine.
There you go.
And so the bottom line is, I was amazingly impressed with what's out there right now. And I helped her choose one which was really well constructed, and it was better quality teaching of math and science and that type of stuff, which I care about, and even language, which is my new pet peeve. And so I don't have a pronoun. I just have done away with my pronouns. I don't have it. And so that, and I thought that was really high quality, and it was really set up. Now, the second point you said, it got to be too much for her at one point, because it's a lot. Kids are rambunctious, you know, 1, I had 2, so it's exponential, right? 2 kids is not twice as much work, it's 4 times. And so, and on. So the missing piece is to have, which we can easily do now, is to have basically remote sessions where you have a very senior experienced people, you know, like an old style professor looking down at you, doesn't see you, and you're holding them accountable. It took me about a year to get her to agree to raise the level of requirement for her daughter, because she kept giving in, sort of her daughter would whine and not want to do this. And I said, you're seeing her act out because you're not engaging her mind. You're letting her off the hook. She's a child. Tell her, they do a lot of horseback riding up there. I said, tell her she cannot ride her horse until she does this work and gets a 100. You know, no 75, I tried hard, no, don't care. I said, there's no blue ribbons for trying. You have to do a 100. And she started doing that. It was very hard on her. Very, very hard. So that gets to your point as a mother. It's not easy to really fight that battle. So, but I kept on her, and she did it, and her daughter thrived after that. There were no more battles, mother-daughter. She thrived, and she's doing great. So I would say that would be the resource, and you either get people who are semi-retired or retired, and they go in and do it, or it's easy enough to do remotely right now. And you take a class of them because you do want to have them sit still, but you want some parents in the room because you want parents kind of being that old vice principal saying, sit still. And then, believe it or not, what's always worked, it's not the only way, is, I did with my own son, is you can't leave this room until you get a 100 on the practice quiz. No, 95 is not good enough. And if you get a 95, I literally rip up your sheet and you start from scratch. And it's amazing the work ethic and the self-confidence that grows from doing that. Really having significant requirements for them to achieve.
Anyone else? Robbie?
So your domain of scientific work, scientific research and all that is much, much broader than mine. I'm going to just focus on a very narrow area. When I came to this country 58, 59 years ago, I heard about, oh, America is so behind in math, students here don't learn, science is bad. It made me feel good. I am from Asia, I'm doing great. And now, in between 57 years and now several times over, I've heard the same thing, you know, we are behind, we're really not doing. To me, that's the same old gas called Exxon.
Well, so
But we still keep making more research, producing more scientists, producing more, research, new technology, everything. We continue to be the leader of the world, better economics and all that. So I don't think we really need to worry about where we are. It's the system that we have created here, competitiveness and, the open society and let the business take care of it.
So I
What
would
do you
say
have to
that
do?
that was true up until recently, in which case, part of it is the progressives want to eliminate all the high-quality stuff. So where we are is the Thomas Jefferson School, and they want to shut that down. The Bronx High School of Science, which my parents grew up in New York City, was always the epitome of getting into. So the point was there used to be an off-ramp for the most intelligent kids, which exists in all other countries, and so to go and profess them. As you dumb them down, they don't get that education. And so now they're coming out undereducated. On the second side, there's a trend, because I'm an employer, is that it's too easy for Americans to get high-paying jobs without fighting the battle to go to advance. So it's almost impossible to hire a PhD now that's American-born in any super advanced environment. And so when you go into these places, that's why you have the visa program alive and well, because you can't run your operation without them. And so now that we are, as a national security issue, rightfully, I've been against moving semiconductor processing offshore since the beginning, because it's a critical technology. We have to move them onshore, but I worked in that industry. That was my first industry after college. So I was in Silicon Valley, when it was actually Silicon Valley, and I was doing semiconductor processing, and I was in all the clean rooms. And it's an extraordinarily advanced technology environment with a huge number of specialists. And the whole system, you don't get a chip coming out the other end unless this entire choreographed set of specialists know what they're doing. And so the system is not taking care of itself. And so, and what used to be there, which is to have honors programs and special schools and all that, now under the guise of equality means everyone's dumb, then that's falling away. So every Saturday, I have a friend of mine who's a programmer in India, and so I met him through a collaboration I had, and so I get a full dump, he's in northern India, of how severe the corruption is. So they had a baby a year ago. They had to knock on the door right as soon as they got home from the hospital, and there was a couple of people with shaving masks on, and it was basically you had to pay them a bribe, or they were going to go around your neighborhood and say that the demon was inside your baby. And I laughed at that, being a technical person. He's a technical person. He said, no, it's real. He had to go to get a business license. He had to pay off the front desk guy. So India is replete with intelligent people doing great work, but the society is really not up to that. What you see here is a filtering mechanism. So the best and the brightest come here, and then you go, oh, Indians are so smart and so successful. Well, that's the best and the brightest who got out of Dodge, right? And so you can't survive on that. If those people come here and settle, well, then they become Americans. But what you're seeing is the homegrown Americans fall by the wayside. And so I'm an employer, I'm getting ready to hire people. I'm not hiring any Americans, I tell you right now. I don't have the patience or the time to deal with somebody with low initiative who thinks that I'm there for them, who thinks I'm going to give them a break to go protest something. Not happening. It's, I have run a 1955 style shop. If you want me to pay you, sit down, do what I tell you, do it extremely well, and if you want a bonus, do even more. And so I don't have any patience. So I do PhD quality work, and so I'm going to be hiring PhDs overseas from Israel and Ukraine and Serbia. And so I was going to go to India because I have this friend there, and he told me you can't even hire anyone decent in India anymore because the big consulting houses like Tata has just vacuumed them up just to own the market. So they're taking everyone good. So now if you're a mid-sized company and you need talent, even they're going and hiring people remotely overseas. So that's the real world. So when I'm looking as a startup company, I have to pay, I'm watching every dollar. I need work done. I need high quality work done. I'm not wasting my time. So if you come in, I have no trouble mentoring people. So through all the companies I have absolutely no trouble hiring a junior person and mentoring them and paying them a senior salary if they show they can work. And I've done that multiple times.
But I've also had employees who thought their job was to breathe, I think 100 times a day, and then they went home.
Just maybe one more?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mayor, and I'm a trustee for a university, and we're seeing a huge problem. It's not just the university that I went to, but all the universities are seeing a huge problem with retention of college students because of the COVID gap. They just are not prepared and not ready to do college level work. So we're seeing a lot of kids that can't make it. And I don't know, do you have an idea on how we remedy that as a
Well, one, I
society?
said, I did something with the University of Maryland project. The first part is to get rid of this idea that everyone's the same, or everyone can make it. There is a bell curve of intelligence. The people at the higher level are going to achieve more, the people in the middle are going to do okay, and there are going to be people who just can't make it. So one is to recognize that's the real world in education. The other one that I did, because this is master's level, remember? So I had a master's level class, and they had all gone through a bunch of classes. They were way unprepared for it. So when I had them every week do a lab report, which is the groans you could hear from 1,000 miles away. But this is like freshman, junior level college physics, biology, and chemistry, which is the way I did it. I said, just make a standard lab report. They struggled so much to do that, and more, I had rebellion. I had kids who were clearly smart, who had clearly thought they could just say no to the person grading their reports. So I actually put that on slides at the beginning of every class. I grade your report. I want this. And then I started doing it. So that one guy who was a gamer, really smart guy, he tried to push it as far as he could. And he even faked out his code. It was code-based, and they didn't realize I could read code very quickly. So I read everyone's code that came in the door. And so they tried to fake it out, but I can pick out errors in code very quickly. And I started giving them 50s, taking 50% off the grade. And I said, if you want to play this game, I'm having a scotch. You had 50% on your lab report. So figure out which side is power imbalance. And then I had one young woman who clearly was pushed along because she couldn't even do the basics. She did not meet the requirements. And I tried to be nice to her. I gave her extra help and all this. She couldn't learn the very basics. She couldn't write a single line of code that actually ran. And so I had to tell her, I actually counted it all a few times and said, you need to drop this, because I said, you're going to fail. So I get a call one day from the assistant dean and said, someone filed a safety complaint against you. Someone doesn't feel safe. I thought, oh, okay, that's kind of cool, since I'm 1,000 miles away. So that's pretty cool. I'm pretty impressed with myself. And so we had a little video, and she's a very nice, smart woman, clearly smart. And she starts out that way, and she said, I can't tell you the student's name, but they don't feel safe in your class. And I said, good. I said, I hope they tremble all night and haven't slept for a week. I want to induce absolute fear in their hearts, because she's doing a lousy job, and it's that fear that will make or break. Either she works harder or that. I said, now give me a heads up. I'm going to double down on requirements and this and that, and I hope she doesn't sleep for a month. So I thought the assistant dean laughed, because she didn't believe in all that stuff either. And that's what happens with real people. So this assistant dean had a PhD in a real field, and so she worked hard to get that. And so I think that's probably what you're seeing as well. So people who really put the effort in say, no, it sounded good in theory, but if you want to achieve it, do the same thing, right? And then to bring it full circle, that's where our daughter-in-law is starting to change. She'll never admit it to us. But she got promoted to a manager, and she's had to deal with people, and they were here for Thanksgiving, and she actually said to us, and we held each other tightly so we wouldn't say I told you so too many times, she actually said, I just can't understand how people go to work and not give 100%.
There you go.
And I said, oh, we're like, as a grandparent, you can't say that. But I was desperate to say, what are you going to say? So the point is that there is a path. So I was telling Mark and Bob some other ideas I have, is that part of this, which has also been an interest of mine, is the pseudo-intellectual foundation of progressives. I've spent decades trying to break through that outer layer, and even, so I'm Jewish, and it's a big problem in our community and all that, and so we have lots of internal battles stuff, and so you can't penetrate it, but you always get back on the other side is like, blah, 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 you're immoral. What am I immoral for? I'm just trying to do What's more, I'm not telling you what you should do, I'm asking you for what it is you are trying to accomplish. Not this global, we're gonna live happily ever after, but take something, schools. You know, it's not money. The point is with the stats, the American school system does not need any more money. It's being misspent. You can actually do much better teaching at 1/2 the per capita low. So dumping money in is it. So, but if you have that discussion, that's a reasonable debate to have. Let's go back and forth. But in 30 years of trying, I never got anybody who's progressive who says that not funding schools is immoral to even give me a number of what per capita number relative to all other countries would you be happy doing. So if I gave you budget control, what number would you put into your budget? They can't get an answer. So that's where I get frustrated in that, and that's what I see. I'm very comfortable in the reality of the intellectual debate, like I call foul, and I'll hold people accountable, like you're saying this thing, but all you said is abstractions. What's your basis for that? So I'm very comfortable doing that, and I think that that's an avenue of attack right now. Because all you hear are people yapping at each other, and then they go off and they say, they have some talking head who says nothing, it's circular reasoning, and then they point a finger. I'm thinking that we need to go back to the way, if you remember the way William Buckley used to do his show, is that you're coming at it calmly, but you won't give in until you come to hardcore calibration point type of truths. So you can have any philosophy you want to have, but you have to now back it up. You have to say what it's for. And then, so I think that that's a way to go do that. And I'm not political, so I don't know the right way to do it, but I see a gap there. Like with my own child, I was telling Mark this today or yesterday, I lose track of time, is that the Democrats have full out won the young people in the sense that Republicans are painted as cranky old white people who hate everybody. They've won it. You can debate it all you want. They've won that battle on the ground. So that's a done deal. So now, how do you counteract that? You can't go, here's the Snickers bar, see I'm nice. I think you have to attack it by going full throttle at it and saying, you know, that's not true, and then bringing people in, not token people, but there are a lot of good people out there, and saying, and elevating them. And so last little story about diversity in my years, 25 years of supporting the Department of Defense. So I always tended to market directly to senior people and find smart ones. And then particularly with the Marine Corps, which I enjoyed a lot, that should not be a surprise given what I'm saying here, is that I noticed one day, I mentioned it to Debbie when I came home, that I was spending a lot of my time really hanging around with captains who were black. And because I don't like talking to dumb people. So even if they're a potential client, I just can't stand talking to them. So I noticed, like, I'm going from meeting to meeting to meeting, and the client is this black captain. And so I sat down and I said, you know what? All the smart captains in Quantico, so I was going to Quantico all the time, I said, they're black. And so I actually told him that, because I'm not shy. And so, and it was the thing, and it was, so Marines are very gung-ho, but he just said, we worked harder to get here, but we don't carry a chip on our shoulder. You know, we're a Marine, so we keep forging ahead, and we work hard, and we do our thing. And I said, well, what do you think about the guy down there? I said, it's almost like inverse diversity, you know. He's not qualified for his job. I was in a meeting with him. He's an idiot. And he goes, well, that's what it is. So I've been very impressed with the people out there, and that's this idea that we have with my friend. So he's gotten the Atlanta City Council on his side. He has the Atlanta PDA on his side. And so that's to help the youth. I said, so within that group you have, I guarantee you there's 5 of them who are super smart. But where they are, it's not being pulled out, just like a sports team. So the idea is to go back to the old Grecian idea that it is a total body and mind experience. You can't separate the two. Every hour you spend doing physical sports, you got to have a corollary doing this, and the demands are equally as high. And then I actually do believe that we're trying to have our son and daughter-in-law not send our granddaughter to public schools for this reason. And so I think that that is one of the things to do right now. And I think that Texas is doing so well that building up, so when I grew up in New York, the State University of New York was a big deal. It was very high quality, very low cost, had great reputation of turning out, wonderful, smart people. You can go to a SUNY college and transfer anywhere you wanted to. That's how good the reputation is. I think that Texas is ripe for that, but very high demand, and I would say it should be focused on the high technology science side. Really turn it in with the most demanding side. And then Bob and I were talking about the other day, you're starting to see that you can peel people off from MIT and Harvard and the others, because not every professor there is happy with that. And this is a kind of a classic acquisition. It happens in science all the time. So like the professor I was working for at Penn State actually came from Purdue because he got a lot of notoriety, and so then Penn State basically hired him away. So this whole idea of acquiring talent occurs in science all the time. So I would say that this is a nice, go get some of the best and brightest, bring them down here, create centers of excellence. You can actually get funding. The Office of Naval Research specifically funds centers of excellence. Florida has done that very well. I forget which Florida university it is, but they convinced ONR to fund them to be the magnetic center of excellence in the United States. So you can actually get a lot of money for dispersing that. And particularly if we have Congress people and senators in play, you can quickly get that up to ramp. And then maybe even get more, so some of the semiconductor places are moving in and thought about that. So there is a way to do this, but you have to have, like, the reason I brought up all the warfare, you have to have a real strategy. So one of other Clausewitz's mottos is, don't ever go into a war unless you have a clear strategy, all the way through the strategy. Every battle you take, every action you take should be part of that strategy. It should not just be because you're going into a fight. And then that colors everything that you do.
Thank you. So at this point, we want to have the introduction of office holders and candidates. If you'd like 60 seconds to talk about your position, we're in primary season. If you could just stand up and begin lining up over there. You can come up, present your case to the crowd, and we'll start the parade of politics.
Oh, I thought he said to go around this way or that way?
Oh, God, don't come around.
I'm sorry. The candidates for political office? Yeah.
My name is Suzanne Hart, and it's so wonderful to be here tonight with all of you guys. And I'll tell you, the speaker really speaks to my heart because from the last campaign to this campaign, it was a real spiritual moment in praying. What does the Lord really actually want for me and my family? And I've said this over and over again, but it was really a humbling moment because a couple of weeks ago, I was in front of a group of 10 moms, and they were homeschool moms, and they literally said the same exact words to me. We had just met. They said, Suzanne, we can win on the border, we can win on the economy, we'll win in Israel, we better. And we can win on all these topics that are important, but if we lose the cultural war, what is it for, right? And so that's what's on my heart with Blake being his 26 and Thomas being 19. It's hitting home, and I hear these crazy stories, and Thomas will say, well, this kid on the football team, he was a boy and now he says he's a girl. There's this huge confusion. And so my dad, coming from Athens, he said this is the deal what they do with communism and socialism and Marxism. They go straight for the family and they get the kids first. So the reason to run right now, win, lose, or draw, and I've said this over and over again, is to have a strong voice of the next generation that we must win the cultural war. So I've taken too much time, and thank you, Suzanne Hart, for Congress. Thank you.
Well, hi, y'all. I'm Candy Noble. I'm honored to serve you in the Texas House. Really proud of my record of making little babies safe in the womb in the state of Texas, of constitutional carry, of protecting our border, and so many other things that we have accomplished while I've been there. The one that I'm most proud of, I'll be honest with you, is that we did lower your property taxes. And I worked really hard on that. So I'd be honored to have your vote.
I am Melanie Royer, and I am representing Congressman Pat Fallon's office. And my speech is as short as I am.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shayla Smith. So really quickly, who's ever heard of the game Two Truths and a Lie? Anybody? Yeah. Okay, and so usually it is known as, it's like an icebreaker. It's a way to get to know people, and so I'm gonna do that really quickly with you guys. Two truths and a lie, and then I want you to see if you can kind of suss out which one is a lie in what I say. So I have experience litigating cases in family, civil, and criminal law. I am a mom, a Christian, a volunteer who is a children's church leader, let's see, puppet skit writer, and a Bible study leader. I have practiced law as an assistant attorney general and assistant district attorney in small firms, large firms, and I am currently a senior attorney at Diana Brooks Law. Anybody have any idea which one of those is a lie? Okay, it was a trick question. None of them are a lie. They're all the truth. So my name is Shayla Smith. I am running for judge of the 401st District Court. It is an open seat. There are 3 of us running. I know here, well, I'm going to kick off this idea of 3s. On the 31st, the 3 of us will be here. There will be a forum for that court so you can learn a little bit more about myself and my judicial philosophy at that time. Also, you can go to my website, my first name, Shayla, S-H-A-Y-L-A, forjudge.com, and you can learn more ways to support me and a little bit more about me. And I promise you they're all truths.
Hi, my name is Jason Lassiter. I'm here on behalf of Kim Lassiter. She's running for the 401st District Court as well. She'd love to be here tonight, but she actually has another event going on right now where some of the top civil and family law firms in Collin County and Dallas County are putting on an event to celebrate her and her campaign. The amount of support that she's gotten from all across the county has been incredible in this, and I think they're starting to really see and recognize the experience that she would bring to this bench. And I know that everybody comes up, and whatever office they're running for, everybody comes up and says, Mike, I have the best experience out of everybody. But I think you have to have meaning behind that. You know, I think when somebody says they have experience, it's what have you done with your time? What have you done? Is it just years that you've served? Or is it the expertise? Is it what you have actually accomplished? And I think Kim has accomplished far more in her years than most attorneys can accomplish in an entire career. You know, the leadership that she had in the district attorney's office, she started her career in family law, she's done civil law, she has done it all. And that's why she is endorsed by law enforcement all across the county. Former Sheriff Terry Box, the Collin County deputies are endorsing her. Everybody knows Greg Willis is endorsing her. And now she's got the support of all the big family law firms. So it's Kim Lassiter for the 401st District Court. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Scott Grigg, and I'm running to be your next Collin County tax collector. I was once heard that those who are brief will get elected, so I won't. I was thinking earlier today that we're about 5 weeks away from this election. About a little over 5 years ago, I kicked this campaign off. John Myers was my MC for my event. I honestly can say, and I'm like he said, everybody wants to say we're the most qualified. I have over 35 years of finance, audit, and accounting experience. And for an office that controls over $4 billion annually, that's the kind of person we need in there. The title is collector. I see myself more as a protector. I'll be around, happy to answer any questions. I think I've talked to most of you many times over the last 5 years. But just remember, for the experience that you deserve here in Collin County and the leadership that office truly needs, Scott Grigg on March 4th.
Good evening. My name is Steve Asher. I'm a candidate for Collin County Constable in Precinct 4. I do come to you with over 40 years of law enforcement experience, 20 of which as a law enforcement executive. I've been a chief of police in a major police department in Nevada. I've been the assistant chief deputy for Sheriff Jim Skinner, who proudly supports and endorses me on that side, as well as Terry Box. I'm also currently working as a chief deputy for the constable's office currently. I'm a dedicated professional, a proven leader that's very ethical. I stand on my morals, I stand on my values, I'm a very conservative individual. I'm very honored to be supported and endorsed by several groups around this valley and several clubs that I'm very proud of. Texas Patriots, McKinney Conservatives, McKinney Value Pack. I take it to heart because they have spent the time and taken the time to look at who I am and what I represent. So now I just want to say thank you for meeting everybody here and get a chance to talk to everybody and ask for your vote on March 5th. Steve Asher, Collin County Constable.
Good evening, I'm Robert Canwright. I'm a precinct chair. I'm the House District 66 caucus chair. And I am running for the SREC, that's the State Republican Executive Committee, committee man for SDA. Now, did you know that the Executive Committee, by vote, overwhelming majority, asked our current sitting committee man to resign? We had a reason for that. He declined. So a bunch of us precinct chairs got together, and it fell to me to carry the torch to the convention. So I ask you to vote for me for SREC SDA committee man, and my campaign platform is, I am reliable. You can trust me. I will support the goals and values of the GOP Republican Party. So that is my platform, and now I'll transition to say I'm also representing at this moment one of the other candidates, Wayne Richard, running for House District 66, who couldn't make it tonight. And additionally, for Congressional District 3, couldn't make it tonight, Keith Self. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Porro. I'm running for U.S. Congress in Congressional District 3. I've never been a politician before in my life. What I have been is a volunteer paramedic, captain of a rescue company. I served at 9/11. I've been a physician assistant for 23 years, and I'm currently a healthcare executive for the past 10, and I've been in Texas for the past 10. I have about 370 employees. My annual budget is about $45 million. I'm the head of a national Christian organization, the Fellowship of Christian PAs. We need to start choosing different types of leaders. We need to start choosing people who have more fear of the Lord than want power or money. And they will be fearless in the pursuit of his works and know what we are fighting. Well, I do fear my Maker. I do believe in the promise in Psalms 23. And I know what we are fighting. We're fighting evil and socialism. If you want someone who's going to be a conservative, constitutional, Christian congressman, I hope you consider voting for me on March 5th. Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Andre Thompson. It's my pleasure to serve you as your Collin County District Court Judge for the 416th Court. I am on the ballot. I am blissfully unopposed, which is why I'm more well-rested than everyone you just said. The first time I was your district court before this is my 5th election, the first time I've gotten to be unopposed, and I'm not sure what to do with myself. So I do, however, want to take a moment and introduce my dad, who is visiting me here from Italy. I grew up here in Plano. He had businesses, and he is my original patriot hero. When I was in junior high in the 80s, my dad was complaining about rhinos, and I thought he just had a big game animal problem. So he has been my inspiration for pretty much my entire formative years about what it is to be a conservative and love your country and want to serve your community. And so I am excited he's going to be here with me for a few weeks and gets to come and do some of the stuff he's missing out on over in Italy. So happy to be here. Good to see you.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm running for chair of the Collin County Republican Party. So as your chair, I will empower our party, I will champion our conservative values, and I will unify with precision. So there are 3 candidates for running for this role, and we're all on equal footing because none of us have led our party. That said, I have the most relevant experience for this particular role. For 2 decades, I have led volunteer teams. I have recruited and motivated and led volunteer teams to successful outcomes. I co-created a 501c3, put in place the processes, recruited the volunteers, wrote the curriculum, and executed all of that wonderfully. We ran those from 2005 to 2016, and then I passed the baton successfully to other people that are still running the program. And they've made improvements, and I love it, because I love it when someone stands on your shoulders and does something better, and that's what we all want too, right? And I'm not mad about it, that they've done some things that are great. Graphics especially, their graphics are great. So I've done that a lot. Additionally, I really feel like one of our issues is communication and clearly communicating. So what I will do as your chair is I'll talk to Washington and Austin and our local officials, and I'll say, what are the hot points that need to be made right now? What do we need to communicate to voters? Get those points, put it in bullet point, easy things, share it out with our precinct chairs so they can share with their precincts and constituents. Put it on all our social media. So we're all saying the same message in a unified voice. It will build unity, and our message will go more broadly. And people will hear it, and it will resonate with them. And they will vote with us, and Republicans will be elected. And so ultimately that is our goal, and that will happen with me as your chair. And the speaker, thank you for tonight. A lot of things he said really applied to our party, and things that I have been saying about our party are we need to double down on who we are and stand firm and not move, because when we loosen our standards, everything weakens. And we in this room have not, but a lot of Republicans have, because they are responding to emotion. And the emotion in this society is getting people to go, well, no, that's okay, I don't really believe that. So we need to, as a unified voice, clear, compassionate, but firm, well, this is who we are. These are our values, these are our principles, and we're not going to move on that. And I think it'll be refreshing, and people will come back and join us, because they don't want to be isolated and fearful and all the emotion and all the negative things pointed to them. If they see us standing strong, unified together, and say, this is who we are, we're not apologizing for who we are, we love you, but we're us. And this is the way we need to be for our present and our future. And I really believe when we don't loosen our standards, when we double down on who we are, when we clearly say that message together, I believe that it will be stronger. We'll be stronger as a party. And I believe that we can be, as a Collin County Republican Party, really spread that out across our state, operating in that way. It'll catch on in our nation. And really, I really believe with all my heart that we can make a difference in 2024. And I would be honored to serve as your chair, so please vote for me. Thank you.
Good evening, guys. I'm Abraham George. I am running for Texas House 89, running against an incumbent, Candy Noble. How many of you were at the state convention last year? A lot of you. The rest of you show up this year in end of May. I don't know the exact the date. You'll know. But he's running. His candidacy is at that place. Texas Republican Party comes together and puts the priorities, and one of the top priorities is close the border, election integrity, no Democrat chairs. I'll tell you, my opponent hasn't kept any single one of those promises. That is something that we as the Republicans come together every 2 years and ask for it, and we don't get it. Our education system is a mess from top to bottom. One of the things that our speaker talked about today, I finished my MBA from UNT, one of the most liberal schools in the state of Texas. And one of my professors asked me to put a pronoun. I said no, and she said, you won't get a grade for your papers if you don't put a pronoun on it. So I finally had to struggle and going back and forth. I finally put Trump supporter. That was my pronouns. And she just blew up. And finally agreed that she would grade me, and I still got an A+ on that paper. She was a professor from UTD in Dallas, and as a substitute for UNT. This is the kind of people who are teaching our kids. It is time that we look into some of those things and fix our state. I'm running for Texas House 89. Abraham George. Thank you.
Thank you, Abraham. Because of the way the room filled, I don't know if everybody got a ticket. Did anybody not get a ticket? I did a ticket. All right. So you'll pardon my silence here. Anybody else? Okay. Okay. all the guys that are longtime members of the club didn't get a ticket. Guys were asleep, I guess. All right, anybody else? Okay.
The winning ticket.
All right. You know, the tickets, they say, could be worth millions. Heavy on the could be. So,
Eric, your speaker.
one more? Yeah, no.
You do.
He doesn't believe in luck. Okay. Thank you for your patience while I do this. I'm going to be throwing some extra tickets in here. But, we'll keep picking until somebody wins.
Makes it worse.
Okay. All right, I always ask for somebody that's easy, because somebody better looking than me. Oh, this young lady here in the all black, would you come up, please, ma'am?
She'd love to come up.
Many years ago.
You just look at her, look at her
Read
face
off the
only.
number. I'll read it. Yeah, I have my glasses on. 8905-288. I might have thrown some extra tickets in here, so we have I think of one or two. Sorry. Okay. That's right. You do. Okay.
I'm
Thanks.
his wife, by the way. So many years ago.
8905-293. All right. There's a winner. All right. Dinner out.
All right.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. Our next meeting will be February, it's always the third Thursday, and that is February 15th. So watch your email. We'll announce who our speaker is then, and we hope to see you then. Thank you all very much.